Good morning. Lovely to have you along here again. I think we're up to episode 54 or the like. Now, I lose count. If you know anything about me, I'm not as much a numbers person as Bob or my wife, but wonderful to have you along here all this morning. No, you are very welcome. Solid ground if this is your first time. Runs for about 20 minutes or so on a Tuesday and a Thursday morning as we talk about, the political, the cultural, the social events, even the ethical, happening around New Zealand and around the world. So again, it is marvellous to have you all with us here. I was just wondering whether my comments were working. So good morning to everyone coming in online. Look, it's quite a miserable day out there. I don't know about you. I'm in Auckland and the rain has at the moment just stopped. But it's clearly been very, very wet around the country. Hey, look, some pretty much breaking and significant news this morning. A heads up, it's around euthanasia and basically how the Ministry of Health here in New Zealand continues to get things wrong. And you'll know that I've written and talked about this before, because if we're talking a matter of life and death, you'd think we'd want to get it right. And the ministry continues to bungle things. So I'm going to spend a bit of time on that, and I'll share the data. It literally is breaking news. We only got it last night and been furiously running, to keep to the theme, running the numbers. But first and foremost, to those of you who have been particularly affected by all those massive and heavy rains, I've got family in Nelson. So I'm going to sneeze, hold on. God, there we go. Fortunately, I have a mic mute. But no, thinking of those people in Nelson, Tasman, anyone else around New Zealand who's been particularly affected, thinking of you all. Speaking of New Zealand, of course, we've got people coming online. Our wonderful people, there's Jackie. We've got Chris there, again saying it's very wet in Napier. We've got Trinity, lovely to have you along. Good morning. Rosie is telling me it's also very wet in Taupo. That doesn't surprise me. Lynette, lovely to have you along. Michael, always a pleasure. To Dee, good to have you along as well. In Yolanda, lovely to have you. Good morning, good morning. As I say, if you are actually wanting to comment, if you've actually got questions or comments on anything we touch on this morning, if you're on the Family First Facebook page or on the YouTube channel, the comments like Yolanda's and others will come to me live here in the studio, which is why you often see my eyes darting while I'm talking to you guys. It's not that I'm being distracted. I'm having a look at, the comments. I won't... Oh, I almost wasn't going to share this from Philippa. It's a stunner, I'm being told, in Dunedin. I didn't see the F in one of the words and I went, I can't put that up on screen, but no, there we go. It says more about my mind. So as I say, probably the most significant news is around euthanasia, but I'll just share what I think is one bit of good news. Now, granted, it's coming out of the United States, and I generally try to keep to New Zealand. But I just thought this was something you didn't read much of in New Zealand media, but it actually is a good thing. I think actually Bob was mentioning last night on Straight Talk. So as you know, we do a panel on Monday night. 90% of the media coverage of Trump is negative compared to, I think, was it 60% for Biden or positive for Biden? It was, a huge difference. But because of all that negativity, I don't think you get to see some of the positives. I think this is a good step forward. It's something, again, that New Zealand doesn't have. We don't have any legislation like this. In fact, I was reading something yesterday afternoon that we're now seeing young people using AI to generate pornographic images of their teachers. This is a major problem in Australia. I suspect it's happening here. In fact, I sat down with someone a couple of weeks ago. Her name's Melinda Tankard-Rice from something called Collective Shout. I did a podcast. If you want to jump onto the Family First web page or onto YouTube, you'll find it, Melinda Tankard-Rice. We talked about how they're seen in Australia exceptional amount of harassment, particularly female teachers by very young, some as primary school, again, sexually graphic at their teachers. So it's a real problem. Speaking of problems, Philip is on to me. That is a green screen. I would love to admit to you guys that this was exactly how the weather is here, but no, it is a green screen that I operate. Otherwise, you'd be seeing my very boring office space. There's plenty of plenty of white. So yeah, it's a green screen. People are on to me actually in the evenings when I do my evening shows. It's very bright in Simon's. Anyway. Now, as I say, it was breaking news, fairly significant. It's this, and I'll explain it. So MOH is Ministry of Health. So long and short, as you'll know, Family First, along with other groups, pro-life groups, we keep a close eye on the likes of euthanasia, abortion, transgender stuff, everything. We keep a close eye on it. And as you might know, and again, if you'd followed me, I was on with Jack Tame a few months back, exposing about 7 major problems which came out of recent reviews of euthanasia. But last night we were looking at some numbers, and another group had actually put out a press release with a whole different set of stats, and we went, oh gosh, are they wrong or are we wrong? But we went back into the data, and long and short, the Ministry of Health has changed it again. And this is to do with the number of people who have been killed. And so there's a whole lot of things to quickly unpack here. But the main theme you have to understand, what I would suggest you understand, is, again, we're talking about life and death here. I suspect most of you, but not all, will be, like me, oppose euthanasia, period. It shouldn't be happening. But even if you're one who thinks that it's okay, there are circumstances, it's appropriate, the Ministry of Health has got no idea how many people are being terminated, how many people are being killed. That's the whole point of these numbers, and I'll go through them. But more people are being killed than they think. They don't get the reports in quick enough somehow. So that leaves huge room for error. And then the ministry just puts this information up quietly, discreetly, with no discussion whatsoever. So that's a problem in itself as well. It's why, as I say, when we re-looked at the numbers, but how are our numbers wrong? And then we realised, the Ministry of Health, have changed them. So, and Simply Green saying our statistics do not represent reality. That's the scary thing. That's actually a really valid point that actually just comes out of all of this. There's probably more happening that we don't know of, but it shows that the ministry is not following this and has no idea really what's going on. So, as I say, what this is saying, the Ministry of Health, the top one, so they do quarterly report, so it's forms. So that's obviously from last year we're talking about, from April, is it? Through to the end of June. So they reported 126 deaths, and then they dropped it to 108. So that's a drop. One level you can say that's a positive. The next one's more concerning because then the next quarter, so from July through till the end of, September, they said there was only 73 deaths, and then they revised it up to 129, which is like a 70-something, is it 73%? Someone can do the calculation for me. Is a 70-something% increase. If I had to round it, if I was giving a speech in Parliament, I would be saying, it's almost double the number. Of course, it's not 146, but, it's still significant. I mean, that's a huge jump, people. So this is actually quite scandalous, basically. They clearly don't know what's going on. It's quite possible. It's quite possible that some of that first quarter have been pushed into the second quarter. I suspect that's what the Ministry of Health will start to try and answer. Go, we knew about these deaths, but we put them in the wrong months. Personally, I just think it's a lack of competency. And again, I just want to really underline this point. We are talking about the killing of human beings. You can try and wrap this up with whatever words that the Ministry of Health, pro-death advocates want, but we're ultimately killing people. And if we're going to do that as society, supposedly legally, not morally, I would add, but legally you're allowed to, you think you'd have the safeguards exceptionally strong. But they're not. As I mentioned at the start, I was on Q&A recently with Jack Tame, of all things, talking about how whistleblowers had noted major problems in the system. And by the way, the Ministry of Health has done a review of the system after 3 years. And get this, they don't acknowledge really any of the problems. They just keep pushing for more. They want more people to die. They want to force hospices and doctors to be part of this who currently object. All the time why the ministry can't even do something as basic as adding up numbers. So I think it's a major, major problem. Just looking at some of the comments here, though they're not being honest. And I'd put it at two levels. One is they're not honest around the numbers, and they're not honest that they've got no idea what's happening again. And maybe the third part is they're dishonestly not actually saying, hey, we're just holding our hands up here to say what's happened. They just simply hoping that this will slip under the radar. Simply Green, I think I read out earlier, but they don't reflect reality. In fact, now you can't have any confidence of what the Ministry of Health is telling you, because are they going to revise these numbers again in a couple of weeks' time? Oh, no, we found another 5 people that we'd killed and didn't realise. Again, you cannot overemphasize this. This is not talking about how many hip surgeries or how many glue ears for children, where you still want to know the numbers. This is life and death. They have clearly no idea. And look, I think COVID's a perfectly good example. You do have to wonder what sort of agenda is under here. Why is the ministry trying to do this so secretly? Are there more? Who knows? We'll have to, part of my job, Bob and others, is just to keep going back to these ministry websites to work out what is and isn't happening, because they keep changing it secretly. Well, actually, that's probably not quite fair. They change it, but don't really notify anyone or explain where the change is. I think on the website it says something, there's been a, validation changes. Well, is that because they wanted to put an extra comma in, or as they've discovered, 73, get that, 73 up to 129. I mean, that is extraordinary stuff when you think about it. Again, people drawing the COVID parallels. That's a fair point. Philip is saying already allowing some patients to be assessed. I imagine, I don't, and I can't speak for all. I know some are quite happy. There's one in South Auckland that's actually happy for people to be terminated on site. There are other hospices who won't allow any of it. Personally, I don't. Well, I suppose in many ways it's up to the hospices. I would just hope that they would realise that actually once you start allowing assessments in euthanasia in your facility, you put everyone in that facility at risk. So I know for different hospices I've been involved with, for example, if you go in there, you're going to be cared for with love right to the very end. If you're going to I'm thinking of this one in South Auckland, you go in there going, well, will they? Or actually knowing that they euthanise other patients, I think can be quite disturbing. If your roommate's been, the person beside you, being terminated, I think, particularly when you're feeling sick and vulnerable, it is not going to put you in the best state of mind. So anyway, so I don't know why I'm coughing so much this morning. KH James notes it is a bit scary. Look, it is. All of this, again, I suspect most of you don't support the concept of euthanasia. Some will. But we can even step back from the moral questions and just ask, how is it that the lead government agency tasked with monitoring and making sure that this is being done correctly can't even get the basics such as the numbers right? So you're going to have to ask yourself, and I'll leave it here, you're going to have to ask yourself what else is going on? And, in some ways we'll never know. I'm very aware it's a rhetorical question. But you look at that, they clearly don't know what they're doing. So we're going to get some more out of that. As Rosie pointed out, offered euthanasia. We can sort of slightly jokingly laugh. But I talked to Amanda Ackman recently. She's from Canada. In fact, I'll play you a short video in a second of her. She researches into euthanasia and the Canadian experience. We know that, veterans, instead of being offered, wheelchair ramps, have been offered euthanasia. I mean, these are not made up stories. So, yeah, but speaking of that, as I say, and I'll only play a short video, we have our Forum on the Family coming up. So that's in August. You can register online now. Tickets are already selling. We've changed things this year in a good way, because actually the large numbers and demand that we had last year. So we're expanding things. But one of our people coming is this lovely lady, and she's a real expert. As I say, I did a podcast with her last year, Amanda Ackman.
Hello, my name is Amanda Ackman, and I created a project called Dying to Meet You, devoted to preventing euthanasia and encouraging hope. Look forward to seeing you at the Forum on the Family in New Zealand.
So that's going to be really good because Amanda will be able to explain to you, again, just how the system in Canada is operating. It's yeah, it's saddening to say the least. So she'll be great. As I said, there's a whole lot of other speakers, which will be brilliant. Hey, look, a couple of other things before we wrap up this morning. I won't be as long this morning as other mornings, partly because I am solely responsible at the moment for our wonderful, beautiful foster daughter. And so I'm learning the balance of working, making lunches, breakfasts, and getting out the door. But a couple of quick things is the budget. I'm not going to go into this in depth. You can jump online and see Bob and my talk last Thursday on what we call political playback. You'll all know that we do this show on a Thursday, 5 o'clock. Every Thursday, Bob and I talk the politics. So we talked about the budget. If you want in depth, go and have a chat there. I just want to signal that ultimately, so I'm not hesitating for political reasons. I'm just really trying to get the sequence of this. We're spending too much as a country, and we're putting ourselves in far too much debt. And we need some real leadership in this space. I'm disappointed. That's probably what I'm actually trying to get to. I think some really tough decisions need to be made. It's going to hurt, by the way, guys. And maybe the counter could be that I'm just sitting comfortably here with my green screen. And how's it going to impact? We have to obviously try to prioritise the most vulnerable and those in need. But New Zealand is spending more now than it ever has, even with this new government. And look, they're doing what they're trying to do. But even with what they're doing, they're still spending more, and we're going into more and more debt. And so our wiggle room to weather future shocks, whether that's obviously another global crisis, whether it's a health-related issue, they describe the next pandemic and everyone goes panicking, rushing around, destroying the economies for very little reason at all, or we end up with, God forbid, a war in the likes of the Taiwan Straits. I mean, New Zealand basically is screwed. We're in a bad position now. It will only get much, much worse. To be fair on the current government, part of the problem, and it's not just the current government, governments inherit the decisions of previous governments. And so one of the reasons, and I think it's really important to underline this, and maybe this is my key point for this morning on the budget, because actually Rosie's nailed it for me. Yeah, we should really have Rosie, because you actually, I love all your guys' comments, but to get right to the point, yeah, previous governments, and certainly the last one, spend a lot of money on new initiatives, which then the new government either has to keep funding or cut. Now, some things they'll cut, like you saw around the pay equity. Well, actually, to be fair, that's not quite a cut. They've just tailored it further, but granted, it tightens things. So that's one thing. Obviously, when you cut people's funding, if you said tomorrow we're going to get rid of what they call Best Start, it was I think it was a 3-week payment to newborn, not to the newborns, to the parents, a cash injection, which of course is very welcome if you're having children. But of course that's money that has to be found from somewhere. And the other thing we learn when you're in Parliament is once they set up a new system, forward projections are always too low. In other words, things get even more and more expensive. So, governments, including the current one, are scrambling, trying to work out where you're going to find all the money. But so much of the budget, yep, and DD's right, it's not risen. So our gross domestic product, no, we're not a productive country. I'm sad to say, we are amazing, but when you look around the world, we're not that productive compared to others. And you look at, say, the Americans, I know, again, our mainstream media delight in beating up on the Americans, but actually a relatively productive country and much more spending. They have much more free spending than we do. In other words, they've got more cash. So anyway, that's a whole tangent, but I was just struck, though, of how much of the budget came down to this. I'm not going to play the video, it's just a screenshot. But, we talked, was it last week or the week before, about Andrea Vance's misogynist comments towards female MPs, but how she deemed it okay because these MPs were on the right wing and they deserved it. In other words, misogyny is bad except when Andrea Vance wants to be a misogynist. And it carries on into the media, because I think it started in the Herald, a beat up on Nicola Willis for not wearing a New Zealand design dress, and, well, long and short, critiquing her for what she was wearing. In a way that they never did for Jacinda. In fact, they fawned over Jacinda. The media are hypocrites as well, because they used to, again, fawn over Jacinda and her amazing choices, and they were barreling into Nicola because she paid, I think, over $1,000 or something. They didn't tell you, of course, that Jacinda never paid for any of her stuff. She wasn't in line of Golriz, wasn't stealing, they were gifted to her. So you've got all these double, triple standards. In fact, there's a quick side note, of course. Nicola actually did pay for this, whereas, other MPs we know seem to steal New Zealand clothes. But isn't it striking? And I think Nicola nailed it when she said we're not back in the 1950s, and her colleagues rightly railed against the media and in support of her. The media critiquing a woman's dress standards. Again, it's just their, I don't know, what is it? Is it sexism? It's, again, a misogyny and play. The media would decry anyone else, but they are happy to, of course, do it themselves. So I thought, again, just another low blow, but this is part of the problem. If you're not on the media's side, they will attack you, and they'll often attack you in the ways that they accuse others of doing so. As I've said around Andrea Vance and talked about it quite a bit at times, they'll scream about racism, they'll scream about misogyny, bigotry, and so forth, the media that is, at all and everyone, but they themselves are some of the biggest racketeers into this space. So yeah, I just think it's bad form. Speaking of bad form, the media still, and I suppose this isn't completely wrong, these are just the last couple of things, and I'm going to actually show you what it looks like quite a funny video from Macron. This was the news last night. The lunches stories at schools just keeps getting worse. According to... Rabbit Hole's got a very good comment here. We need to call them something other. Yeah, well, we still have this as a family show. I think the key is just source wider media. That's my encouragement to people. I mean, there's still the mainstream. You can't avoid it. But there is the likes of what we do here at Family First. You have platforms like RCR, Platform and others, read more widely. Because obviously this was, I think a newsworthy story last night. It was on TV1 news that they weren't sure if it was a maggot or something. They think it's actually like a little caterpillar that would have been inside some of the potato. As the I think biologist who was commenting noted, it would actually be quite healthy for you. But long and short, good to bring this to attention. It's not a particularly good look. Excuse me, not a particularly good look. But you could sort of feel, or maybe I should personally, I sensed a sort of delight. The media just want to keep barreling in. They think this is one of the weak sides of the government, and they just delight in, again, barreling in and beating up the government as much as they can. So guys, I'm going to just play, Bob sent this through to me just a few minutes ago. It's actually to do with President Macron of France. If you know anything, now there's always been talk about his relationship with, is it Brigitte, his wife? Again, others will know more, but there's been an interesting altercation on the plane. I'll let you make your own mind up what's happening, and it's sort of sad, confirming some of the things that we'd heard about. Slightly, I don't know if you call it funny, but there's something a bit weird when you're supposedly the most powerful man in France, and this is happening. So take a look at this. So anyway, I mean, it's tragic in many ways, but it'll be interesting to see how the media follows it. I have to give Macron credit that after it looks like she's given him a good smack on the face, he pulled himself together remarkably quickly, I thought. From shock to obviously a smile for the cameras, but I just thought it was fascinating. And clearly she's not happy with him, wouldn't hold his arm on the way down. So let's just see what happens there. But I suppose it's, I don't know, pretty simple. Maybe it's a little bit cheap, but I just thought it was fascinating. And yes, as Entity is noted, oh no, Rebecca, sorry, caught on camera. Yeah, well, again, his face, for me, that was the moment. And I suppose as a politician, not that I've ever been in that situation, I better be clear, never been in that situation. Just realising that you're on camera, that again, that face. But anyway, I just thought I'd share that, guys. I had better run. As I say, it's lovely to have you on here. Know, of course, you can jump onto substack.com. Bob's writing there. I've still got mine. I'm still doing my talks on RCR. This was one of the more recent ones with Rodney Hyde. So there's lots to do, including, of course, you can sign up for Forum on the Family. We'd love to see you all there. It's always a great event. And no, of course, well, Bob and I will be there. We'll be there in person. You don't have to always come on, so to speak, on a Tuesday morning. And speaking of that, of course, we're on every morning, Bob and I. So he'll be on again tomorrow, myself on Thursday. We'll keep you up to date, including around all that effectively growing, I would say, scandal now around how the Ministry of Health is handling data. But guys, have a wonderful day. Dry out after all these rains, and I'll see you. And thank you, DD, saying it needs to be run long. It does at one level, but I've got to get my family to school. So guys, have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you on Thursday.